The first time I really noticed her, was on a Tuesday afternoon at the corner cafe 2 blocks from my apartment. The place smelled like burnt espresso and wet coats. I'd been coming there for months with a stack of articles to read for work, a habit born less from love of coffee and more from not wanting to eat lunch alone in my flat. She always sat at the same table near the window, a little round one with a chipped edge. Mid-40s, maybe more. Dark hair pinned back with a pencil like she'd run out of clips. She read paperbacks with folded corners, scribbling in a tiny notebook between sips. I never saw her with anyone. I never saw her rush. She had the kind of stillness you only notice after the noise of the place dies down. The barista knew my order without asking. Medium Americano, 1 sugar, and slid it across the counter while glancing at her. "Your neighbor's here again," he said once. I didn't know she lived in my building until then. I'd only seen her silhouette on the balcony above mine, watering plants at dusk. That day, she caught me looking. Not in a bold way, just a flick of her eyes over the rim of her mug. I looked away too quickly and stared at the sugar packets like they were fascinating. When I sat down, my hands automatically tore one open and lined the granules on the napkin before stirring. I could feel the back of my neck warming. I tried reading, but the words blurred. Every few minutes, I glanced up. She was doing the same, though never at the same time. Once our eyes met, and we both smiled, the smallest curve of lips. She reached for her notebook then, scribbled something fast, and closed it like she'd been caught. Later, when she stood to leave, she brushed past my table. "You always order the Americano," she said. Not really a question. "Yeah," I managed. "You always bring a notebook." She gave a soft laugh, the kind people make to themselves. Old habit. Her fingers drummed once on the tabletop. Then she was gone, out the door and into the streetlight. After that, the cafe felt empty. Though the same songs played, the grinder still screeched. I stayed another hour, scrolling through my phone, half composing a text I didn't send. "Saw you at the cafe. Want to sit together sometime?" My thumb hovered over send until the screen dimmed. Back home, I climbed the stairs slowly. Her balcony light was on, spilling a soft glow onto the ivy. I could hear faint music through her door. Old jazz, maybe. I unlocked mine, stepped inside, and set my empty thermos on the counter. My apartment smelled like nothing. I stared at my phone again. A notification blinked. Unknown number. "You're the Americano from downstairs, right?" I frowned. Before I could reply, another message came. "I'm having a few neighbors over Friday. Nothing big. Stop by if you like." I read it twice. The timestamp was 2 minutes ago. The music upstairs stopped. I leaned against the kitchen counter, phone in hand, heart pushing slow and heavy. I pictured her at her kitchen table typing this out, waiting, maybe regretting it already. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but no words came. Only the faint hum of the refrigerator and the sound of someone moving about upstairs. Friday came faster than I expected. All week, I rehearsed ways of declining her invitation, then ways of accepting it without sounding eager. In the end, I just showed up, empty-handed except for a bottle of cheap wine I'd grabbed from the corner shop. My palms were damp when I knocked. She answered barefoot, hair still damp from a shower, wearing a loose gray sweater that slid off one shoulder. Jazz floated out of the apartment, softer than on other nights. A handful of people from the building were already there. 2 older men from the 3rd floor, a young couple with a baby monitor clipped to the woman's pocket. It smelled like cinnamon and ginger. "You came," she said. Her smile wasn't wide, but it reached her eyes. "Come in." For the first hour, it was small talk and refillings of cups. She moved around the room refilling bowls, listening more than she spoke. I stayed near the balcony door, sipping my wine, answering polite questions about my job at the college library. No one seemed to notice how often she glanced over at me. By 10, most people had gone, leaving a scatter of plates and glasses. She stood by the sink rinsing a dish and said over her shoulder, "Thanks for coming. It's different having people here." "Different good or different bad?" I asked. She shrugged, back still to me. "Both, maybe." I moved closer, setting my glass down on the counter. "Want a hand?" She handed me a towel without looking up. "Sure." We worked in silence, passing plates, stacking glasses. Her hands brushed mine once when she reached for a mug. light enough to pretend it didn't happen, but heavy enough that I felt it all the way up my arm. I dried slowly, giving myself time to breathe. At one point, she said, I used to throw dinners all the time. When my son was little. Before the divorce. Her voice caught on the last word like a thread snagged on a nail. I nodded, unsure if I should ask more. He doesn't live with you? College out of state. She kept her eyes on the running water. Funny how quiet a place gets after someone leaves. Something in her tone landed in my chest. My own apartment was always quiet. I filled it with podcasts or background music just to keep the silence from feeling like a verdict. I wanted to tell her that, but instead I folded the towel over the back of a chair. She noticed and smiled faintly. You're careful. Most people just toss it. Habit, I said. My mother worked nights. I did a lot of cleaning up as a kid. She looked at me then, head tilted. You're younger than you sound. I laughed once soft. And you're quieter than you look. For a moment, neither of us moved. The apartment felt suspended. No music, only the hum of the fridge and the clink of a spoon settling in a glass. She poured tea into two mismatched cups and slid one across the counter to me. It's chamomile, she said. Good for nerves. Thanks. I cupped it with both hands, though it was too hot to drink. She leaned against the counter opposite me, blowing on hers, eyes down. I thought about the age difference, the way the barista had called her, your neighbor, with a smirk. I imagined rumors, imagined my colleagues at the college seeing us together. It wasn't scandal, exactly, but it was something that could tilt if we weren't careful. Yet standing there, holding the warm cup, the risk felt less like danger and more like gravity. I don't know why this moment stayed with me. I said before I could stop myself. Maybe because it feels like someone finally saw me. She blinked, surprised, then looked away. A small crease formed at the corner of her mouth. You say things quietly, she murmured. Most people don't. I overthink, I admitted. That's not always bad. Her hand moved as if to adjust the sleeve of her sweater, but instead her fingers brushed my wrist, just once, light enough to be an accident. But she didn't pull away immediately. Her thumb pressed the edge of my pulse before she turned to put her cup in the sink. Thank you for helping, she said, voice steady again. Most people just leave. I nodded, unsure what to do with my hands now that they'd been touched. She walked me to the door, leaning against the frame as I stepped into the hallway. Her smile was small but lingering, the kind you see again after you close your eyes. Good night, she said. Good night. The door clicked softly behind me. In the elevator mirror, I caught my own reflection, flushed, holding the taste of chamomile and a touch that meant more than it appeared. The week after her gathering, I didn't see her at the cafe. Not once. I kept going, lingering longer than usual, stirring my Americano until it went cold. Each day the empty table by the window made me restless. On Thursday evening, I heard movement on her balcony. A scrape of a chair leg, the faint clink of glass. I almost went out on mine, just to say something. Instead, I stood in my kitchen with the lights off, waiting. She knocked the next night. Not loud, 2 soft taps. When I opened the door, she was there holding a book. You left this downstairs, she said, though it wasn't mine. A slim paperback, the spine worn. It's not, I started. I know. She smiled, tired around the eyes. Thought you might like it anyway. I let her in. She moved carefully, like she wasn't sure she should stay. She sat on the edge of the couch, tucking her feet under, while I leaned against the counter. The distance between us felt like a third presence in the room. You disappeared, I said finally. Busy week. She rubbed her thumb along the cup I'd given her. And I thought, maybe I was too forward. You weren't. My voice came out sharper than I meant. I looked down at the floorboards, traced a scratch in the wood with my shoe. I liked it. Silence stretched, filled with the hum of traffic outside. She watched me, eyes searching, like she wanted to ask something but didn't. Then, a knock at my door. Too quick, too loud. My friend Eric, grinning with a 6-pack in hand. Game night? He said, then stopped short when he saw her. Oh, sorry. Didn't know you had company. His eyebrows lifted, curious. Just a neighbor, I said too fast. The word neighbor felt wrong in my mouth, flattening what was there. She lowered her gaze, set her cup down. I should go, she murmured, already standing. No, you don't, I started, but she shook her head, giving me that small, polite smile that didn't touch her eyes. Eric shifted, awkward, then muttered, "I'll come back later." By the time I turned, she was at the door. I followed, hand hovering near her arm, but not quite touching. She paused in the hallway, looked at me for a long moment. Close enough I could see the faint line of freckles across her cheekbones. "I don't know what you want," she said quietly. Not accusing, just honest. I swallowed. "Neither do I." Something in her expression flickered. Relief, maybe, or disappointment. The space between us shrank for half a second. I could almost feel the warmth of her breath. My hand lifted, almost brushed hers. Almost. But then she stepped back. The air broke. "Good night," she whispered. The door closed before I could answer. And I stood there in the hallway, pulse in my throat, replaying how close we'd come. Rain had been falling all afternoon, the kind that makes everything smell like concrete and leaves. I was packing books onto a cart in the library basement when my phone buzzed. "Need some air. Meet me outside the college gates." No name, but I knew. She was waiting under the awning when I arrived, arms crossed, hair damp at the ends. She wasn't looking at me. Her eyes tracked the cars passing, their headlights smeared in the drizzle. "You okay?" I asked. She shrugged, a stiff roll of shoulders. "I just couldn't sit in my apartment another minute." We started walking without deciding where. Side streets slick with rain, a line of puddles catching the glow of the street lamps. I kept my hands in my jacket pockets. She hugged her sweater tight. Our reflections moved together in the shop windows like someone else entirely. For a while, nothing. Only the sound of water running into drains, our footsteps soft on wet pavement. Then she said, "Lo, I saw you at the cafe yesterday. With someone." "My coworker," I said quickly. "We were just talking." She nodded once, eyes still on the ground. "Of course." I almost laughed, not at her, but at how suddenly my throat felt tight. "Are you jealous?" It came out lighter than I meant, almost teasing. Her face flicked toward me, sharp, then away. "No, She stopped walking, pressed her palm to her forehead. "God, listen to me. I don't do this." "Do what?" "Watch people. Imagine things." "I don't," she breathed in out. "You're so young." I didn't know what to say to that. The rain hissed in the gutters. Somewhere a car horn echoed. She rubbed her hand down the side of her sweater, fingers trembling slightly. "I keep telling myself it's harmless," she went on. "Coffee, helping with dishes, a neighborly text. But then I go home, and—" She trailed off, shook her head. "I haven't felt like this in years. It's embarrassing." "It's not," I said quietly. She gave a small, brittle laugh. "You don't even know what I'm talking about." "I think I do." We'd stopped at a small park, empty except for a wet bench under a maple tree. She sat. I stayed standing for a moment, then sat too, leaving a respectful space between us. Water dripped steadily from the branches. I could smell her shampoo, faint citrus. "I worry you'll regret this," she said, almost a whisper. "Whatever this is." "I already regret not doing something," I said before I could think. She looked at me then, really looked, like she was searching for an escape route in my face. Her hands twisted together in her lap. "My son is only a few years younger than you," she said. "I'm supposed to be past this. I'm supposed to know better." I wanted to tell her I'd thought of that too, lying awake at night. How the age gap made me feel both older and smaller. How every time my phone buzzed I imagined it was her and also wished it wasn't. Instead I said, "I don't see you as an age." Her lips parted, but no words came. She stared down at the puddles around our shoes. I could feel the question building between us, the one neither of us had asked. "I don't know why," she said finally. "Why now? Why you?" "Maybe because you saw me," I said. "And I saw you back." Her eyes closed briefly, as if that hurt. Then she laughed once, no sound. "You're going to make me do something stupid." The silence after that was almost warm. My hand hovered over hers on the bench. She didn't move it away, but she didn't turn it over either. We sat like that, the rain thinning to a mist, both of us staring at our own reflections in the wet ground. I almost asked if she wanted me to walk her home. I almost asked if she wanted me at all. The words formed in my mouth and dissolved. She spoke first, voice so low I barely heard. If I opened that door, would you step through? She didn't look at me when she said it. She didn't move her hand. The question hung there, suspended, heavier than the rain. And I sat there, not answering yet, feeling the weight of it settle between us like a held breath. I stopped seeing her after that night on the bench. No texts, no balcony lights spilling onto the ivy. The next time I went to the cafe, her seat by the window was occupied by a stranger scrolling on a phone. It shouldn't have felt like a loss, but it did. On Tuesday, I stayed late in the library, shelving returns, waiting. She usually came in once a week to pick up books for her class. This time she didn't. By the time I left, the campus was dark, the smell of rain replaced by cold asphalt. I checked my phone. Nothing. 2 days later, a note appeared under my door. Folded once, no envelope. Going away for a bit. Family stuff. No name, but her handwriting, the slight slant, the looped Y's. That was it. No return date. I sat at my kitchen table staring at the note. It felt like being left mid-sentence. Not heartbroken exactly. Just paused. Like life forgot to finish the thought. At work, I became jumpy. Every time my phone buzzed, I snatched it up. Every time the library door opened, I looked up expecting her. Nothing. Even Eric noticed. "You're distracted," he said over lunch. "Girl trouble?" I almost laughed, but didn't. The following Saturday, I finally saw her again, at the grocery store near campus. She was at the end of an aisle, comparing jars of sauce. For a second, I thought about turning around. Instead, I walked toward her. She looked up, startled, then smiled quickly, the kind of smile you give a cashier. "Hey," I said. "Hi." She held the jar like a prop. "Didn't expect to see you here. You disappeared." "Family emergency," she said lightly. "My son came back for a visit. Needed me around." I nodded, though something in her tone felt rehearsed. She turned the jar in her hands. "He's protective. About who I spend time with." "Oh." We both looked at the shelves instead of at each other. She reached past me for a box, her sleeve brushing my arm, then stepped back like it hadn't happened. "I should go," she murmured. "Dinner to make." "Sure," I said. "Of course." I watched her walk away down the aisle, a grocery bag swinging at her side. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Reflexively, I checked, a blank text thread with her name at the top. No new message. Only the half-written one I'd never sent after the bench night. "I don't care about the age gap. I just want to see you." My thumb hovered over send. The cursor blinked like a heartbeat. I didn't press it. That night, I sat on my balcony with a mug of tea, looking up at her dark window. I tried to picture her kitchen light on, her music playing, but the image wouldn't hold. It felt like she was already gone, even though she was still only a flight of stairs away. I rehearsed knocking on her door. In my head, she would open it, surprised but not angry, and everything would spill out in words I didn't have yet. In reality, I stayed seated, the tea cooling in my hands. Below, the streetlights flickered. A bus hissed to a stop and pulled away. Somewhere above me, a door closed, muffled. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. It was late on a Sunday when I heard her door open upstairs. Footsteps down the stairwell, a pause, then another knock at mine, softer than before. I opened it to find her standing there without a coat, arms wrapped around herself, hair a little tangled like she'd been pacing. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She went straight to the kitchen table, sat down like she'd been holding herself upright all day, and finally let go. I poured 2 mugs of tea without asking. Chamomile again. When I set hers in front of her, she cupped it with both hands, but didn't drink. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The refrigerator hummed. Rain tapped lightly against the window. She stared at the table's wood grain, tracing it with a finger. "I shouldn't be here," she said at last. "You are." "I know." She laughed once, brittle. "My son left this morning. We had a fight. About a lot of things. Mostly me." She looked up at me then, eyes rimmed pink but dry. "He thinks I'm reckless. He thinks I'm lonely." I leaned against the counter, unsure where to put my hands. "And are you?" "Lonely." She gave a small shrug. "Sometimes. More than I admit." Her thumb rubbed the mug's handle. "This isn't fair to you," she said quietly. "I keep walking toward you, then away. I keep wanting you to read my mind so I don't have to say anything out loud. I'm not asking for fair, I said. I stopped. The words felt too big. I don't even know what I'm asking for. She nodded slowly. I know. The silence thickened but didn't feel hostile. It was the kind you fall into when there's nothing left to pretend. She looked at me, searching. You don't deserve my confusion. I'm confused too, I said. Every time I see you, I want to be near you. And every time, I wonder if I should disappear instead. She smiled faintly, like that hurt but also soothed. At least we're honest. We both laughed once, soft and nervous. She reached into her bag and pulled out the slim paperback she'd given me weeks ago, the one that hadn't been mine. This is my favorite book, she said. I wanted you to read it because there's a line in it. About two people sitting in the same room, both thinking they're alone. That's us, isn't it? Sometimes, I admitted. She set the book on the table, fingers still resting on the cover. I don't know where this goes. I'm not going to be the woman in someone's secret. I'm too old for that. I'm not looking for a secret, I said. Her eyes softened but didn't look away. Then what are you looking for? I almost answered, but the words tangled. Instead, I walked around the table, sat opposite her. The space between us felt different now, not charged, just open. I put my hands on the table, palms up, not reaching, just there. She stared at them for a long beat. This will cost something, she murmured. For both of us. I know, I said. Another pause, longer than the others. She set her mug down, slid one hand across the table until her fingertips brushed mine. Not a grasp, just a touch. Her thumb traced a small circle against my skin. We stayed like that, neither of us moving. I'm scared, she said finally. Me too. Her mouth quirked, almost a smile. Okay, she whispered. It wasn't a promise, not even a plan. Just a word, small and human, sitting between us like a held breath. I turned my hand over so our palms met. She let it happen, eyes closing briefly, shoulders dropping as if she'd been carrying something heavy. We sat there in the kitchen, hands touching lightly on the worn table, the rain soft against the window. No declarations, no grand gestures. Just two people in the same room, finally not thinking they're alone. 6 months passed. Not all at once, but in small domestic increments. New leaves on the ivy, a change of playlist at the cafe, winter coats giving way to light jackets. Our lives slid into a routine that looked almost ordinary from the outside. Most mornings I still stopped at the corner cafe before work. She'd begun teaching a short story class at the college on Fridays, so sometimes she'd appear at 8:47 a.m. exactly, her hair tucked behind one ear, ordering black coffee instead of tea. We didn't sit together every time. Sometimes she worked at her own table by the window, and I at mine, but there was an ease in knowing the other was nearby. We didn't have to fill the air with words. After her class, she'd sometimes find me in the library basement helping a student find a reference book. She'd lean against the doorframe, watch for a moment, then hold up a thermos as a signal. Tea upstairs? We'd sit at one of the long tables, two mismatched mugs between us, the quiet hum of the building like a heartbeat. No secrecy, no glances over shoulders. Just presence. The age difference didn't vanish, it never could. Her son came back for another visit, and this time she introduced us. It was awkward, but not tense. Later she admitted, sitting on my balcony as rain drizzled on the street below, it's still complicated. But it feels less like a mistake and more like a life now. I didn't say anything. I just passed her my mug, still warm with chamomile. She smiled at the taste. On weekends we sometimes walked the same wet streets where she'd once stopped me under the maple tree. The bench was still there, its paint peeling. One Saturday she sat down, patted the space beside her. This was the hardest night, she said softly. And the best, maybe. I sat, our shoulders touching lightly. No one looked twice at us anymore. At home, the small signs of each other multiplied quietly. A paperback left on my nightstand, her extra tea in my cupboard, a spare key on her hook. Nothing dramatic, nothing posted online. But the absence of drama became its own kind of peace. Once, at the cafe, she caught me tearing a sugar packet open and lining the granules on a napkin, the old nervous habit. She reached over and smoothed the line with her fingertip. Still careful, she murmured. I looked up. Her eyes were soft, steady. The moment lasted only a second, but felt like an entire season. Our love wasn't a sudden confession or a single decisive kiss. It was a series of small decisions: to show up, to stay, to pour tea, to knock instead of text. We didn't stop being hesitant people. We just learned to hesitate together. That was enough. One evening, as we locked up her classroom, she said, "Do you ever think about that first night? When I texted you?" "All the time," I said. It felt like life tapping me on the shoulder. She smiled at that. It felt like opening a door and not knowing if someone would step through. We walked out into the cool air. She slipped her hand into mine without looking. Our strides matched without trying. The street smelled faintly of coffee and rain. Nothing cinematic, nothing perfect, just warm. Later, sitting on her balcony, mugs of tea between us, she said, "We're both still a little paused, aren't we?" "Maybe," I said, "but at least we're in the same sentence now." She laughed quietly, the sound settling into the night. That was the last thing either of us said for a while. It didn't need anything more.